So Yogendra, I want to start by asking you, from Ramdev to Anna, what are the differences and the similarities in the way in which both these groups have been protesting and what they're asking for?
Looked at from outside, there is a fundamental similarity. The similarity is that both these protests come from outside the organized political movement sector. They don't belong to political parties. They do not also belong to the well-established social movements of the country. Both these come from outside, pick an issue that matters to the people and try and build a movement on that. Beyond that, I guess they diverge. They diverge because Team Anna had something concrete to offer by way of an alternative bill. I'm not sure if Baba Ramdev has to offer some precise way in which the black money problem can be resolved. They are also different in the sense that, having stumbled a bit, finally Anna movement has gone for alternative politics. Baba Ramdev doesn't seem to be quite clear. If we go by his latest declarations, then he seems to be going for NDA against UPA, which is not really trying to offer an alternative of any kind. Also, the mode of protest in that Baba Ramdev wishes to draw upon his existing yoga network. Team Anna wants to and has to create something new altogether. Also, I guess there may be some differences in how they handle questions of personal corruption. Team Anna has faced some of these questions. In the last instance, they have come out without a major taint. There have been some embarrassing episodes, but on balance, it doesn't look like a movement which has a lot to answer itself on questions of corruption. I'm not too sure of that on Baba Ramdev. It's very hard to see what is Baba Ramdev's position at any given point of time, because he floats. It's very fluid positions he has taken over the year. So it's not clear where he stands. I'm not sure what to make of the idea of bring the black money back, because I cannot find one person in India who wouldn't say that. Think of the one person associated with black money in this country, and he would come on your television, on your camera, and say exactly this. I am not sure what to make of the fact that all political parties in this country should be trusted to bring the black money back, because then the question would be, why did they not do so for last so many years? So,
And on the Lokpal, he says that should be built by a political consensus and that any other method would be stupid, which is a direct dig at Team Anna's way of looking at.
yeah, I mean, I can see the dig, and I do think that in the last instance it will happen through the parliament. Of course, everything has to happen through the parliament, but to expect parliamentarians to come up with the best possible recipe may not be the most astute analysis of politics, because if they were to come up with this solution, why did they not do it for the last 20 years? Why is it that parliamentary committees met only after such huge agitation? So clearly they need pressure from outside. In the last instance, pressure from outside must translate itself into parliamentary procedures. Of course it has to. But to leave it to themselves, someone could say, Baba, why have an agitation then in the first place? Trust them, let them do it. Why bother?
So is this also a valid way of sort of drawing attention to yourself and towards a sort of like an alternative kind of political engagement you want to build?
Fasts or protests as a mode of drawing attention to an issue is not a bad idea at all. This happens everywhere. In India, that is the principal purpose fasts have done. Tehri Bandh, who would have heard about it but for the fasts? So yes, they draw attention to a cause, and it would be better to see movements which state it upfront, clear. And I do hope we can move towards a situation where movements do it more and more, do it clearly. Otherwise, fast becomes a very strange instrument unless you know who is being addressed, what exactly is being achieved. In the case of the fast undertaken by the then Team Anna, I did feel as an outsider that this is a fast which is unlikely to yield any results, at least from the government. Clearly, no government can, assuming that the demands are perfectly justified, no government can concede it because that would be admitting that the government shouldn't exist. So the demand was not going to be met. In a sense, what that fast could have done was to take the movement to its next stage.
But it wasn't stated like that at the start. So, which is why it begs the question, why did they fast? And they say that this came up, the demand to form a political party or a mainstream political formation came up during the course of the fast. And that then makes people wonder, because a lot of people have said that there has been talk of them forming a political party as far back as 6 months. In fact, their own core committee members have told this to Tehelka. And not just to Tehelka, they've said it widely on their own blogs and they've been writing about it. So that again takes us back to the question of why did Arvind go on the fast if it wasn't for the SIT, and also why has Ramdev gone on the fast, you know?
In the case of Anna movement, the purpose of the fast was stated in somewhat precise terms. Though you would be right to think that this couldn't possibly be something they hoped to actually achieve. Clearly, the fast was meant to signal a new stage of the movement. I was one of those 23 people who wrote to them requesting them to please call it off and to think of forming an alternative political force. At the same time, it would be naive to think that a movement would start thinking about its next stage after they receive a letter from 20 people. That just doesn't happen.
So for them
I
to
don't
say
expect
that,
any, I don't know what they are saying, because in different stages we've heard different things. I do not expect any serious movement to start thinking about questions, large questions like this, only after they receive letter from some 20 people. I think, and I really hope for their own sake, that they would have thought about it for much longer. So when I read about this in the media, I do not see this as accusations at all. I see this as a natural. If someone told me, no, actually they thought only for 24 hours after getting your letter, I would be worried if that were to be the case. These are large decisions. I'm sure these are thought about. I do remember speaking about it to a group of Team Anna activists when they met me after August. This was a group of about 50 persons.
in August last year.
After August last year, I met the group of all volunteers who wanted to think about what lies next. And I remember speaking to them for 3 hours. And what do I speak to them about except politics? Of course, I said politics is the way forward. This is where you have to go. So I can't imagine that this is not a question they have thought about. I'm sure conversations have gone on. And this is not just this movement. Almost every major social movement of this country has to face this question sooner than later. And they have detailed discussions about it. So I'm sure they had detailed discussions, and in retrospect, it would seem that the fast was something which signaled the arrival of the movement to the political destination, something that may have been thought about, but may not have been determined. So the moment of determination may have come there. Moment of thinking must have preceded.
I also wanted to ask you about your own involvement with Team Anna and Arvind Kejriwal, although you say that it's a careful and calibrated kind of friendship. What do you mean by that, and how exactly are you associated with them?
In the older days, there used to be a term called fellow traveler. I would see myself as a fellow traveler of this movement. I do not constitute a part of Team Anna. I have never been involved in their formal decision making. But right from April last year, I said this is a positive sign for our democracy, having noted all the negative potentials. In August, they invited me. I went there and spoke twice or thrice. I basically said from the podium that this movement is not about a person called Anna Hazare. This is about Annas all over the country, and a small Anna that resides in our heart. I said this is not about Lokpal bill, because not many people understand the technicalities of Lokpal bill, and even I had some reservations about the specific bill that they had supported. I personally thought, I said so, I continue to maintain that the package and the approach offered by NCPRI was, to my mind, a much better approach. And I really wish both these movements had engaged much better and had learned from each other. So it was not so much about Lokpal bill, it was about Lokbal, which is to say people's power, people's sense of this sense that I can do something, I am not helpless. That was the difference. And it was not so much about corruption as an issue. Corruption was a proxy for everything else that was happening in our system. I said all those things then, and I continue to maintain it. I went in December when news channels had declared it a flop show. I went and spoke to those 500 or 1000 people, and once again, this time in Jantar Mantar, I was invited, and I said my piece. I basically said politics is the way forward, and I welcome it, but please do not get into the standard way of doing politics. Do not think of the short term, because short term success is a very dangerous business. It invites you to do all the things you don't want to do. Please do not measure your success and failure the way political parties do. My own belief is that success of a movement like this should be measured not by how many candidates they get elected, but by the agenda setting function that they perform. Small movements all over the world have been able to shift the agenda of mainstream parties in some crucial ways, like the Green parties have done. Success should be measured by how much have they been able to change the rules of the game, the political culture of the country. Can they make it embarrassing for other political parties to put up corrupt candidates? And third, success should be measured by how many idealist youth can they attract to public life in our country. I would measure it by that, not by how many votes they get in whichever election they propose to fight. So I remain a friend, someone who welcomes this move, even after media has declared them dead and finished. I think it's a very good time for them to regroup, to discover their strength. They have, for the first time, attained something which a large number of social movements wanted to but did not succeed. Namely, for the first time, we have a movement which has a national viability and visibility. It has a large potential support base. Actual may be very small, and therefore I wouldn't go by numbers in Jantar Mantar or even Ramdev Maidan last year. I think what matters is the potential that this movement has. And if they can convert even 1/10 of the potential into real, we are looking at one of the biggest movements of our time. But in order to do so, they need to be more clear about their ideas. They need to be more clear about engagements with Baba Ramdev and such like. They need to create an organization which is transparent and democratic internally. And I guess they need to engage more seriously with social movements of the people's movements of this country, which have been there, which are deep and serious. So my dilemma in a sense is this, and this is what I also see as an opportunity. On the one hand, you have older social movements of this country, people's movement, which have grassroots presence, very often limited to an area, which have ideological contestations of a serious nature, which have developed an ideological understanding, and which have a leadership which is quite mature leadership in certain ways. On the other hand, you have this newer movement of Anna movement, which has enormous energy, which has very large potential, which has national viability and visibility, but which may not have yet worked out an ideology, which doesn't have a grassroots presence, and which may not as yet have political maturity.
Do you think Anna and Ramdev can eat into each other's potential if both of them became overt political parties? Could they eat into each other's potential and cancel each other out?
Really, it depends on how they play it out. You know, I don't see both becoming political parties competing with each other. But yes, there is only a limited, I mean, in the medium run, one of them would come out clear as as inheritor of anti-corruption movement's political legacy. Only one can emerge. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Thank you so much for all your wisdom and perspective.
Wisdom and perspective. Thank you.
Thank you.